AI is transforming evidence brokering in Africa, lessons from Uganda and South Africa. Well, my name is Gloria Anderson. I do community of practice management as well as stakeholders management at Africa Evidence Network, and I'll be your moderator for this exciting and forward-looking session. Well, we are thrilled to have you as we explore how artificial intelligence and digital tools are reshaping how evidence is being produced, how evidence is being accessed, and how it is being used in policy and decision making across the continent. As we all know that with growing urgency for timely, tailored, and contextually relevant evidence, we are seeing digital innovations, especially AI, playing a transformative role in supporting evidence brokers and the intermediaries. So today's session is hosted by the Center for Rapid Evidence Synthesis and the Pan-African Collective for Evidence. You will hear directly from the brilliant minds. And when I say brilliant minds, I mean it, they are all brilliant minds behind several AI-powered tools which are used to support evidence-informed decision-making, with examples from Uganda and South Africa. So just before I introduce briefly the bios of our speakers, let me share a little bit of housekeeping points. So please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. Also, we encourage you to use the chat for comment, questions throughout the session, and we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end.
Gloria, I think we might have just lost your audio. I think you might have gone on mute by mistake.
Yes, I think you can hear me now, right? Yes. So with that, I would like to of our speakers, just for you to know who we have on board. We have Andile Madonsela. She's the Director of Innovation and Equity at Pan-African Collective for Evidence. We also have Edward Kayongo. Edward Kayongo is a Technical Coordinator at the Center for Rapid Evidence Synthesis. We also have Mr. Hector Makolo. He's a Senior Business Analyst at Pan-African Collective for Evidence. We do have Dr. Ismail Kawoya. He's a Senior Research Scientist and a Head of Office at the Center for Rapid Evidence Synthesis. And we also have Dr. Lawrence Malhanza Langa, who is the Executive Director of Pan-African Collective for Evidence. And last but not the least, we do have Dr. Rona Mijubi. She's the Executive Director of the Center for Rapid Evidence Synthesis. So with all that being mentioned, I would like to invite Rona and Lawrence to open us up with reflection on the role of AI in knowledge brokering across Africa. Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gloria. And yeah, I think as you've outlined, it is really a collective of people who've worked on this across PACE and ACRIS. So it's really exciting to see this come together. It's been one of these initiatives that we have been doing slowly in the background over a couple of years, and a really nice time where I think we have the knowledge brokering field, which in its own way has been growing, is coming together with the AI field, which of course I think we've all seen how that's been growing over the last couple of years, and a really nice time where for both PACE and ACRIS, these two fields merge, and we can see what we can use from the technology in our brokering field and what we can learn from each other. So it's been a really nice journey, and nice to have this collective together. The overall session, I think, will try to give you a little bit of the background of how we see the brokerage and technology systems come together. So that will painting the scene that Rona and I will do. And then we'll come to the more nitty-gritty, the more techie elements, where we have our team members reflect on the different tools that we've developed over the last 2-3 years. So the beginning, slightly more high level, bringing the brokers into the field, and then we'll become a bit more techie. And yeah, much looking forward to both technical questions later on, as well as more fundamental systemic questions on the brokering side in the Q&A. And So I'll get us going now. Rona had a flight schedule, so you do see her online. She's listening in, but we have her contribution as a video coming in between. So if we go to the next slide very quickly. Super, thanks so much. So as much as we have talked now about evidence and policy and technology in the opening, that is actually for this work not the starting point. So I think for both PACE and ACRIS, our starting point is the socioeconomic issues in our context, particularly for this project in the gender field. So we wake up every day to outrageous inequality, and particularly in the gender space, GBV rates that are just absolutely shocking. And so that's been the starting point for us for years, that we want to do something about these socioeconomic issues. And we do believe that evidence and data has a role to play in that. It's not to say it's a magic bullet at all, but we do know that our policymakers are busy designing policies and programs that try to do something about GBVF, that try to do something about poverty. But somehow, year after year, when we get the statistics, nothing fundamentally has changed. And so that's what gets us up in the mornings. That's what we're trying to change. And we do hope that if we have more evidence-informed policies, that we can make a dent on poverty and inequality. And that is not at all to say that evidence is a magic bullet at all, but we do think there's a role that evidence plays in at least 3 ways. Next slide, please. So just really broadly, our starting point. So if we think about how can evidence and data use support poverty reduction and gender outcomes, we think about that in 3 ways. So from an economic narrative, we do know that separating the more effective policies from the less effective one helps us to have more impactful policies that reach more people at a better cost and do more changes on the ground. Secondly, from a political perspective, we also know that evidence use can make policy decision-making more transparent and more accountable. Citizens and communities, if they can see that data and evidence has been used in the process of making policy decisions, trust these more. So we have a political narrative here around accountability and transparency that evidence can contribute. And then the third one is around equity. We do know that having diverse voices in the rooms when policy decisions are being made matters massively so. And through brokerage and through different pieces of data and evidence, we can bring some of these voices in. So broadly, that's how we do think evidence has a role to play in the fight against poverty and inequality. Next slide, please. So if we then think about the evidence system a bit more holistically, particularly how brokers fit in, this is a fairly crude linear representation. It's much more complex in real life. But of course, it does start with the production of evidence and data. And it does end at the use of that data and evidence by decision makers in government, in NGOs, as citizens. But we think it's fundamentally important that we have the evidence brokers in between these 2 groups. Brokers play roles around building relationships, individual relationships, organizational relationships, institutional ones, to connect the production and the use. Brokers can help bringing bodies of evidence to life, contextualize them, package them for the right point when the decision is being made. Brokers can help to connect the capacities between evidence users and producers and try to make these more receptive, so that we have decision-making structures that are more open for evidence use. And at the same time that we have evidence that fits better into these structures. So there's a really, really beautiful world of brokerage, and I think that's where PACE and ACRIS usually spend their day-to-day. However, when it comes to technology investment, we just click on the animation. So if we talk about technology investments, bringing now the AI conversation in, we have seen that there's a lot of investments, particularly on production and use side. And this is beautiful and this is important. So we've seen really nice changes on how evidence is being produced, both primary research as well as synthesis, talking about living evidence, automated data extraction, searching for evidence. This is all changing really fast, and there's a lot of exciting developments in that space. At the same time, we see that in the evidence use sector, where modeling has improved massively, where we see new decision-making aids coming, new prediction tools coming. And again, this is really important. However, when we started with this project on this journey, we tried to look around, well, are there any investments in AI and digital tools for brokers specifically? And we didn't find too many. And we thought that was a big gap, because if we believe in these representations where brokers are the connection between supply and demand or production and use, then surely brokers do need technologies in their own right. So that essentially was our journey, our starting point. And I'll hand over now to Rona to reflect a little bit more on that.
Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you to everyone that is joining us today. I'm excited about today's webinar, but more importantly about the topic. Newer technologies like AI combined with tools in evidence-informed decision-making are important in Africa because of their potential to address the continent's unique challenges and accelerate sustainable practices and certainly development. We have all used AI in some way now and agree that it has immense potential to enhance our work. But we have also realized how in many ways this needs to be done in a responsible way. The teams at ACRES and PACE, alongside colleagues in Ethiopia at the EPHI, have been experimenting and developing some tools in this regard, being innovative and relevant, but also staying aware of the critical ethical and accountability issues. So underpinning our efforts and objectives going into this space a couple of years ago with the support of the Gates Foundation was the fact that these newer technologies could enhance several experiences, but for us mostly the evidence users and the knowledge brokers experience. Along the continuum of research to evidence and knowledge, we noticed that there seemed to be quite a number of tools to support the production and synthesis of evidence, but less after that, to support meaningful translation and use. So what we've been exploring, and you will see in this webinar, is how to harness, this potential. We wanted to see how, AI can enhance EIDM by processing large data sets, working with different sources of information and evidence, and not just the formal indexed and peer-reviewed evidence, and then automating tasks to combine this with EIDM's quest for decisions being data-driven and evidence-informed or evidence-based. We also wanted to see the potential for better policy prediction. Now that we could play around with bigger data sets and more variables, we could improve the cross and transdisciplinarity of our analysis. Let me use the example of climate change. So AI can help in predicting weather patterns. It can also, optimize agricultural practices. You could also have, promotion of renewable energy solutions. All of this coming together, to inform one policy process a whole lot better than we would have done without the AI tools. We also wanted to see how we can use this opportunity to enhance equity and reduce inequality. This really underpins the work that we do, even outside this project. So each time we use more data better within the policy making processes, the potential to reach one more person who would not have been reached earlier is higher. But for us, we were even more deliberate to ensure that we are developing tools that are already attuned, to equity. So indeed, one of the focus areas you will hear today that we had was gender. How do the tools help improve and ensure policy processes are considering everything they should around this? Efficiency, we wanted to improve efficiency, obviously. So the role of brokers is often, underestimated, but also often not understood at all. So once one understands it and how different it is from being a researcher, and how in many circumstances it may actually transform into that of a policy maker, of a policy advisor, the need for its efficiency becomes urgent. We have been in this role for close to 2 decades, and we know the importance of efficiency. And so we came to this work looking to harness whatever we could to ensure that knowledge brokers in any low and middle income country can be empowered to play their increasingly important role even better. Another potential we saw was, the potential to improve the transparency and accountability of many of our processes. The average scientist will call for standardization of processes to help deal with issues of transparency and to ensure, one is not veering from what is agreed as the best practice. But in decision making and in the real world of brokering, this might not apply. So the work of an advisor varies quite a bit, even within the same process. We wanted to explore how, our tools can improve the support, analysis, and dissemination of evidence within different audiences, promoting greater transparency and accountability in the translation process, and also eventually in the decision-making process, but while staying discreet and sensitive as the processes may require. So generally, I'm excited that we have reached, this point. We've reached our goals and even surpassed some of them in many ways. I'm also excited about the teams that have been at work. The ingenuity and innovation that sits with these young people is immense, and I would like to thank them for all the hard work. We have a number of tools and a number of lessons that have arisen out of this endeavor. Maybe before we see the tools, I'll pass back to you, Lawrence, to see what these lessons have actually been. Thank you very much.
Super. So now you've heard from Rona, and I think my slides will come back up in a second. If we can go to the next slide. So I think Rona has reinforced exactly this idea that there's been a body of knowledge brokering work for a while, and now we're trying to bring the tech world into that, which of course had its own development journey. And when we started this a couple of years back, we actually generally not sure if it was going to work. And I think we're particularly nervous at knowing that knowledge brokering is such a relational human process. We weren't sure if technology actually had an entry point there, or whether it was going to distract us, slow us down. We generally weren't sure. So when we started on the learning journey together with the Gates Foundation, it was an open question. I think now 2 or 3 years later, we are quite confident to say that it is feasible within the brokering space to both develop technology in-house for brokers, bespoke tools, but then also to apply them in the brokering process that our teams have been doing for a couple of years. We have good examples where the brokerage tools you'll see a little in 5 minutes have informed policymaking already, where they have made our life easier as brokers, and that is a positive for us. We weren't sure if it was going to work, and now it's quite nice to reflect back and be able to say with confidence that it is feasible. A second big worry we had is whether policymakers and our colleagues in government would actually trust the digital solutions that we are building. Because I think oftentimes we know from innovation theories, adoption of yet another tech tool can be quite tricky. And what we found is that it's probably a bit more that policymakers trust us as brokers in the first place. And if we vouch for a certain set of technologies, that allows us to have an entry point. So that was a second big learning around trust. If we talk a bit more about performance of these tools, as Rona had already flagged, it is a lot around efficiency. So the chat EIDM tool, you'll hear a bit more about in a second, is saving us a lot of time. So it does cut down the time that it takes our team to find the relevant body of evidence by around 60 to 80% in good scenarios. So really excited about this efficiency gains in our processes. And then I think a fourth point that Rona had already alluded to, it does help us in terms of thought leadership and the broader evidence sector to be integrated with some of these big developments that are happening in AI. And we've seen a lot of nice synergies, for example, with the evidence synthesis infrastructure collaborate and a few other colleagues. Next slide, please. So from the kind of the learning on technology and brokerage, what hasn't changed is, I think, the overall learnings for how do we get brokerage and evidence use going. So as much as we will be talking a lot of technology next, we just wanted to leave this aside very quickly that none of this has changed our overall learnings in the brokerage space, that policymakers need much more timely evidence, that relationships and trust is a bit of the magic sauce in any brokerage process, that evidence use, evidence to action is highly relational. That even if we talk technology, it doesn't change that the evidence use process needs to be demand-led by the user herself, policymaker-centric and responsive to policy needs. Rona has outlined already that the role of a broker and therefore associated technologies are diverse. Sometimes you're a bit of an advisor to a policy colleague. Sometimes you're just an evidence library providing a citation or the latest PDF. Again, it does not change at all that we need to center equity in the decision-making processes much more, and that technology needs to be a tool to reinforce that. And then I think our last point to leave, coming back to the earlier slide, we have seen a lot of investments generally in increasing the supply of evidence and improving that. If there's not a proportional investment in thinking through how that supply leads to brokerage and use, I do think we have a slightly of a systemic issue in the evidence ecosystem, that we're producing more and more evidence, hoping it would lead to impact and use, but we haven't invested equally in the next steps, which is a brokerage and then the users themselves. So I'll leave it there, saying technology is not changing anything about that, but it is super exciting, and I'll hand over to the team now to talk to the tools a bit more.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all that. Now we are getting into a very exciting session whereby we're going to now see how the tools are and how are they being used. So we will have Ismail, Edward, Andile, and Hector. But just to begin, let's start with Ekas and then we'll go with Pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, for that introduction, and I think where Lorenz and Rona have left us provides us a good segue into what we are going to talk about to demonstrate the different advantages, especially the benefits of what these digital solutions have been able to provide, of the possibilities when it comes to evidence brokering. So I'll share my screen just to take us through some of the tools that we've developed, but also sort of stimulate conversations on some of the things we can think about when we are looking at what digital solutions can do, the possibilities in strengthening the evidence brokering process, emphasizing key lessons that have been highlighted by Lorenz and Rona, especially when it comes to efficiency gains, innovating synthesis, and how we package the evidence to for the policymakers. But importantly, we are introducing tools where, in a process that is very importantly, very heavily a relation-based process. So thinking about how relations work and introducing such tools, it becomes much more difficult or much more interesting to see what evidence tools can do. In the next couple of minutes, we'll be sharing the set of tools that we have developed, but also the thinking around these tools and what the tools have been able to do when it comes to evidence brokering. So to start with, we had to first conceptualize what is it that we are talking about when we say evidence brokering, and where do digital tools come in. To emphasize, when we're thinking about, or when most people think about brokering, it's really to the evidence synthesis process. And as what has been heavily mentioned, it's the relationships. But if we're talking about the relationships, it's we are also thinking about to whom are we trying to serve, and that's the policymaker. So in our conceptualization of what this meant, it meant that whatever we are doing to ensure that evidence is accessed and it's the best quality and it's used in evidence processes, it's to the benefit of the policymaker. So if we are thinking about what tools would be of benefit is to a policymaker and what you're developing, it has to start from that point of view. So we started with a process mapping to understand the whole process, starting from the policymaker's point of view all the way through the whole synthesis process. And through that, we're able to identify where are the pain points, where are the tools, which tools have been developed for so many of these processes, which tools, which areas, where are the opportunities that the tools haven't been developed. And as you all know, it's the key gaps were in the areas where the relationships were very important. And if you're thinking about this as a system and you're thinking of the flows, the links between, it's that the linkage between the policymakers that matter. How does the policymaker think about the need for the evidence? When do they decide to approach a knowledge broker? So if a policymaker is faced with an issue within the policy process, what are their options? Their options could either be using the already available information, and this could be seated within them in terms of tacit knowledge, or it could either be within their colleagues and they have meetings and they will take the decision. Or they may decide to then ask for extra evidence. And this bit of when they ask for extra evidence, what is it that they are looking for? They actually might be looking for insights. They might be looking for evidence to back up what they're trying to say. They might be looking for evidence to support, to inform a discussion. So you really need to know what they're trying to look for. And in that case, it might either be one or two options. One, they might go to might come to a knowledge broker, or they might use quite commonly a consultant who is going to look at one primary source of evidence to sort of do an evaluation, whatever evaluation it is, to be able to generate. But if they come to a knowledge broker, the knowledge broker will go through a series of processes that we mostly know, but key of those processes, what we call the rate limiting step, is building that relationship and understanding the actual need, which is quite often in when you're trying to clarify that policy question. What is it that you're trying to support this evidence for? And then later on, you're trying to then, after that, you've provided the evidence. How is it that they are going to engage with this evidence? And what's the value of the tools within that? And in each of these steps, we then look for tools that have been developed to support each of these processes, and looked critically in how those tools support. As a result, we've developed a tool map that someone can easily go to be able to generate, to be able to find quickly where these tools are and interact with them. And when you visit this tool map, the URL is it's just up there. When you visit this tool map, we're able to show you which ones can you then find that would help you in automation. How accessible are they in terms of where the place, whether you need internet, whether you can use it offline, and whether they're thinking about equity and how to get the evidence that can support you in having conversations around equity. So as you can see, when it comes to the conversations around with the policymaker, especially around identifying the needs, contacting knowledge brokers, or clarifying questions, those are areas that are quite devoid when it comes. There are very few tools, and I'm saying very few doesn't mean that the tools aren't being developed right now. And some of the tools that we've developed are focused on that. Then after that, we then thought, okay, we know what tools have been developed. What else do we need to be thinking about? And as you've seen, one of the key areas was on access, the engagement with the evidence. And when it comes to the engagement with the evidence, it's beyond providing that product. And as we all know, and majority in this webinar might know, and if they don't know, is that evidence is just one of the sources, or is one of the inputs that goes into policy making processes. And if it's that, then when it goes there, you have to take the extra effort to get the policymakers or those in the policy space to be able to engage and understand what the evidence is. So there's several processes to go through that. Specifically, when it comes to digital tools, we've now developed a digital repository. One, it's not just about providing the product, which for us is the rapid evidence synthesis product that provides that, but someone can be able to engage with it, engage not just with the product, but also with the references. And this is not really reading and getting through all what you've done, but providing that with an AI-based tool or platform. So this AI-based platform is able to help someone engage not just with a product, and if they're really more interested, they can also engage with the references to really see what the evidence is about. So here what we are saying is, one, there is improved efficiency in access of this product. Gone are the days where you produce a product, and I'm saying gone are the days, but it's still really a practice, and we're trying to see how to push that differently. You produce a product and you keep it on your URL or whatever I would say, your website, and really it is going to be categorized as gray literature. So a lot has changed when it comes to these products. We go through review processes, and different teams have different processes, and these are really standardized and how. So these tools, being able to have a standard platform where these tools are, not also provides opportunities for creating standards of what the products will look like. So this repository also provides someone whoever is engaging with the evidence with the chatbot, and you can engage with it. Specifically, we guided this chatbot to make sure that whatever you're engaging with is with the sources of evidence that are already in, and those who are interested can search the URL here, and in that where the evidence is not available, there are so many opportunities to engage the team to be able to help you synthesize the evidence. And that's one of the ways where we're thinking about how to improve access, how to improve standards. We also saw gains in efficiency, but also engagement with this. I'll request my colleague to take us through the other two, where we were thinking of one of the key pain points for us is in the extraction. If you've done a synthesis, you know the pain that you go through extraction. Over to you.
All right. Thank you, Ismail, for that. Just going to share my screen. Excuse me. All right. So I hope that you do see my screen. All right, so as Ismail was ended his presentation, so we felt like one of the major challenges that we currently do face in the process of evidence synthesis is data extraction. The entire process of data extraction can actually take quite a number of days to go through it. So we decided to develop an AI-based data extraction tool. So the reasoning behind the data extraction tool is to try and improve the efficiency of the process of data extraction, both in terms of quantity and quality. So quality in terms of reducing
I think we have lost Edward. Am I the only one facing this?
Sorry about that.
yeah, sorry, dropped off on my PC, so I'm using this now. So as I was saying, in terms of quality and quantity, so quality in terms of reducing the errors that humans make when they are extracting the data. Then in terms data extraction tool simply as it is, and it can be used as a single extraction tool if you're doing single extraction. But for now, as we work through improving the efficiency of that tool, we suggest that the tool should be used alongside a human for double data extraction. Because if you fully run on single data extraction, if there is an error that is going to come up in the data extraction process, that error is going to be carried throughout the entire data extraction process that you're going to be doing. However, if you do the data extraction alongside a human being, it will be very easy to tease out the errors that are coming up, which is the typical double data extraction that is done when you're doing the evidence synthesis. So how the tool was designed, It is designed to support importation of papers from Zotero. So why we went for Zotero is that Zotero provides a free key, which isn't really the case when you go to the other reference managers. So you import all your references into Zotero, add PDFs in Zotero, then you add the Zotero API access key somewhere here, if you can see where my cursor is, and the Zotero ID, then you process. When you process, it will automatically import the papers. It will create the different libraries that you have within your Zotero folder. It will process those papers, and then you can start extracting data from the PDFs. So for purposes of this presentation, we did not add the actual tool, but we are going to add the link to a YouTube video of how the tool works. We shall not provide the link to the actual tool yet, because we are still finalizing a few things here and there with the tool, but we shall be in position to share the YouTube video of how the tool works. So also, for everyone who is within the AI space, clearly understands that AI is very prone to hallucinations. AI will always give you an answer. Whatever question you ask, it will give an answer. So for us to control for those hallucinations in this data extraction tool, we decided to design that tool in such a manner that it runs through the RAG pipeline. That kind of restricts the scope in which that tool can look for data from to just the papers that you have provided it with. Then to control for cache, which can be a challenge of increasing the size of the tool. Every time you load, the tool might take longer to load because there is existing cache within the platform. We decided to, the original design was with a vector kind of approach to data extraction from that tool, from the PDFs, but we changed that, and right now the tool directly scraps the data from the PDF, so it does not need to create additional cache, which can be a problem in the future. So that is the data extraction tool, fully built basing on AI. So the next version of the tools that we developed were developed using the RStudio platform. So for those of you who are into statistics, data analysis, and the like, you should be having an idea of what R is. So we developed these shiny apps after interactions with the policymakers. So we had these two questions for the policymakers where they were looking at understanding how many health facilities in Uganda, which health facilities in Uganda have solar energy access, and those ones that do not have solar energy access, and of those which have, where is the solar energy still operational or not? Then the second question that we had from the policymaker was looking at energy use patterns in refugee host communities. So in Uganda, we have the integration of refugees into the host communities. We still do have some refugee camps, but most refugees kind of integrate into the community. So the policymaker wanted to understand the energy use patterns within those refugee host communities. The policymaker initially expected us to produce the typical reports, that normal reports you would expect in PDF format with an introduction, background, and all of that. But when we're analyzing the data and trying to understand the data, we decided to go for the shiny app kind of approach, which improves synthesis, improves transparency, because when you do provide this data to the policymaker, for example, you provide this app to the policymaker can interact with the app and the synthesis product whichever way they want. They can generate different graphs, tables, and figures from the shiny app. So also in terms of packaging, we kind of thought through how best can we provide this analysis to the policymaker in a format that is usable for the policymaker, and also empower the policymaker to take this on beyond us. So that is how we also came up with a shiny app idea of packaging, dissemination, then user ownership, if the policymaker has access to the Excel files where the data is coming from, they actually own the data and they can use the data whichever way they want to. So just going to take us to the links for these apps. We shall start with the solar energy app. Okay, I hope you're still seeing my screen. So with the solar energy app, as you can see, the typical report will still have this information, why they are asking for, why the policymaker is asking for this information, who the policymaker is, what the question is. So we have this information here. Now, what we did for this particular app, we automatically coded the Shiny app to import the data direct from a Google Sheets document. So why we did that is that if the Google Sheet is updated, then someone just needs to come to the app and refresh the data, use the refresh button, and then that data will automatically refresh. So far, we have mapped all health facilities that have solar energy in Uganda. The total number of health facilities that you see as 806 here, this is just a sample from, I think, about 3,800 facilities in Uganda thus far. But the biggest interest was in the facilities that have solar and whether the solar is working or not. So the additional information is on the total number of health facilities so that we can get a clearer picture of what this actually is. So as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you have the home button, refresh button, which allows you to refresh the data. Then you have the analytics button. So when you go to the analytics button, it will give you different analysis of the data that you have. You can always change here and look at, let's say, like ownership of the health facilities, government of Uganda, private for profit, private not for profit, and where there is a blank, that is health facilities that the reports we used did not necessarily pin who the owner is of those health facilities. So this is the normal frequency table, but you can have a cross tab of the data where you can decide to cross tabulate the information. So who is funding the solar facilities, the solar installations in those health facilities versus probably ownership. It could be versus the level of the health facility and the like. So if you provide this to the policymaker in such a manner and the policymaker gets to understand how the Shiny app works, then the policymaker owns this data, they own the report, they own everything that is coming out of it. You can also have graphs automatically generated from the data that you have provided. So you can also change what graph you wish to see. The data is categorized into the solar equipped facilities and then the share of facilities that have solar. Then you also have the stacked graph here, which also communicates something different. But essentially, that's how this app works. And then finally, we do have a GPS map that can direct the policymaker to where these different facilities are. So the ones that are highlighted in orange have the solar installations, then the ones that are blue do not have the solar installations. If you click on that particular dot, it will give you more information about the health facility, the name of the health facility, who is funding the health facility, whether the solar panels there are working or not. And then you can have different filters here on the left-hand side of the screen. You can play around with the data depending on what the policymaker is really interested in. So that is one of the apps. Then to come to the to conclude with my presentation, Ismail, just a moment. I'm looking for the presentation. So to conclude with the presentation, I'm going to demonstrate the one for the refugee settlements. Just a moment. Right. Okay, thank you, and sorry about that. So just to note, these links are available open access, so you can always access these links whenever you want, and the code behind them, you can always reach out to us. We can share the code with you, and you can tailor it to your different needs. So finally, the refugee settlements map. Need to stop sharing, share again. Right. So the refugee settlements app, essentially the functionality is the same as the previous app that we have seen. Having a bit of trouble with internet here. All right, so internet is being a bit of a problem, so probably I'm going to drop the link of the refugee settlement map into the chat box, into the chat window. But essentially, it is a description of the different energy use patterns by refugee settlement communities in Uganda. And it categorizes the energy use patterns by solar, firewood, LPG, which is gas, then different plant products like dried leaves and things like that, different energy use patterns by the refugees. And for that particular app, which unfortunately internet is proving to be a challenge, failing to load. For that particular app, we are integrating also the health, should I say patterns, disease patterns versus the energy use patterns. So someone can easily visualize the type of energy used, for example, let's say cooking or lighting or warmth versus the different diseases, to kind of draw a correlation between the energy use and the prominent diseases within the area. So a bit of context to that is that pollution, air pollution, kind of exposes people to different diseases of the upper respiratory tract. So by the policymaker being able to visualize some of these patterns, it becomes very easy to advocate for different changes within the policy space in Uganda. With that, I want to say thank you very much and hand over to Ismail to conclude. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Edward. And as you can see, when it comes to digital tools, we're not going just to say we're improving efficiency, we're improving effectiveness, but certainly we are looking at drawing more insights, being more innovative in how we synthesize and package this information. So just lastly, I would just talk about one that is really in the offing, and so I will not go so much in the detail of it, because this is really something that we are working on. And for those who have been in spaces where we are talking about it, you will have had something about it. As I mentioned earlier, when we mapped the whole process from the policymaker being able to think about whether they need evidence, all the way to when they get back the evidence, we then got back to a point where we got to the table and thought, okay, we shouldn't, I think it would be more helpful for us to create an in-suite system where we have both the policymaker and the production of this rapid response or rapid evidence synthesis in one platform. And then that got us to developing this rapid evidence synthesis platform that we are calling Cloning Grona, which basically is cloning the one person we know who is the blueprint when it comes to rapid response service or rapid evidence synthesis service, where we know about the challenges when it comes to training or building capacity. I mean, you will build capacity, but for how many will you build capacity when it comes to rapid evidence synthesis to be able to respond in very ultra or hyper situations where you're responding within a day, within 24 hours, 48 hours, and be able to respond back to the policymaker in that time. But also, as you're doing that, how do you standardize these processes? Where do you pick up the efficiencies that we've talked about and make sure that some of the things, some of the areas that can be quickly automated, and I'll play, and I'm going to play the video just on the side, as you will see what it looks like on my right. That's what it looks like right now, and it is in production. So thinking about all that, where do we get the efficiency gains in automating certain processes, clarifying the question and being able to draw insights from the conversations quickly, drawing insights from the evidence that is already available or briefs that are already available, as it is going to be linked directly to our digital repository, getting the question directly from the policymaker getting feedback and follow up in timely processes with the question. Because as some may know who've been doing this work, it may not be unusual for a policymaker to change their mind about a question midway, but how do you manage that? How do you get them to appreciate the process and be able to be in sync with what is going on and know exactly when they're expecting a certain product, they're expecting insights from the evidence, and be able to engage, not just to get to the point where they know what the evidence is, but they appreciate the whole process so that they are what I would call quote unquote, it becomes habitual that looking for evidence or thinking about the need for evidence is second nature to them. So this is a tool that we have developed that is currently in development. It has quite a lot of capabilities and functionalities within. So I'll stop here just to leave you with that teaser. Please look out. It will be out in about a couple of weeks. We'll be ready with it. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Ismail and Edward. You know, this has been interesting. Personally, I was also learning. I even forgot to tell you to stop in the past 20 minutes. But I think all is for good. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now we're going to hear from Hector and Andile. Unfortunately, they both had other tasks to do, and so they have only recorded their tools and how they work. Please, Jihad, wherever you are, kindly share the recordings for Andile and Hector. Thank you so much. This is very interesting. I hope the chat box is very open. If you have questions, suggestions, please keep shooting them. Jihad, the floor is yours. You can share the screen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Hector Moloku from PACE, and I'm a senior business analyst. And I'm pleased to introduce you to Chat the Idea, a chatbot designed to help policy makers interact with evidence in real time, starting with gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. So what is Chat the Idea? Chat the Idea is a policy-oriented chatbot powered by a large language model, LLM, integrated directly with our evidence maps created using EpiMapper. It helps users such as policymakers, researchers, and knowledge brokers to ask questions and get data-backed responses from curated evidence. So this means you're not just getting a general AI response, but you're getting a response that is rooted in vetted data set and coded research. So now let's talk about why it matters. Often the evidence exists, but it's hard to access, interpret, or apply in decision making. So ChatDIDM aims to bridge that gap. It does three core things. One, it provides reliable answers based on evidence maps. Two, it prompts critical reflection through smart, context-aware follow-ups. And three, it records interaction data to improve future policy engagements and analysis. So now let's also talk about the key features that are contained within the ChatDIDM. Let me quickly highlight some of these unique features. And it's got the natural language processing, so users can ask questions in plain English. It contains some reflective prompting, so the chatbot nudges users to think more critically. And it has gender and evidence awareness, so it flags when evidence might differ by gender or when the data can't support a reliable answer. And it is web-based and integrated. It works seamlessly with our evidence maps interface. Okay, before we dive into the demo, let's just talk a little bit about the map and why the name ChatDIDM. So this map was co-developed by PACE in partnership with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, as you can see over here. And it is called ChatDIDM, Chat for Chat, and EIDM for evidence-informed decision-making. So in other words, you can query the chat using the natural language query, and the chatbot will use the large language models to interpret the query and retain summarized information with cited references and thoughts on how it went about retaining the evidence. So this is remarkable because there'll be 80% time reduction between the time the policymaker requests the information to the time the knowledge broker actually provides the evidence. So this will be, the integration of this map with the AI, as indicated with the AI chat toggle over here, right? So of course, this is the traditional evidence map, like you'd know it, with outcomes and sort of interventions, and the chatbot would answer questions based on the pieces of information that is contained within the bubbles, and for the outcomes and for the interventions as well. And of course, the blanks represents the gap in evidence. But we will just focus on a few questions. And what's also important to note is that the chatbot has got 3 prompts: is the irrelevant prompt, the gender bias prompt, as well as the systematic review prompt. So in the interest of time, we will not look at all the prompts, but it is important, or rather worth noting, those as a piece of a sort of functionality that is important for us. Okay, so now let's just dive into some of the questions just to see how this exactly works. So there will be a list of questions that you'll be asked by the chatbot over here. And so let's just go ahead and just answer those quickly. Right. Yeah, so the chatbot wants to know whether I'm a researcher, a knowledge broker, or a policymaker. And it also wants to know which country I'm from. This is just to collect some data in the background. And my gender is male. And yeah, gender is violence and femicide. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Right, now let's just go ahead and query what studies contained in this evidence map. Right. Okay, it will take a few seconds, approximately 20 seconds to return an answer. So yeah, let's just wait and see, because there's a couple of things that kind of happen in the background. And voila, there we go. So you have your answer over here. So it will tell you the evidence map contains a variety of studies focused on gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. Here are some of the studies included. So these are the list of studies that are included. And this is the thought process as to how it went about answering those questions, right? So yeah, and that is that. And if you were sort of interested in a particular study, you could just take, like some text of part of the references just to see what's in here, and just click on enter, and you will get the actual studies itself, the link over here if it's available, of course, and the authors, the year, title, etc. So this is how it works. Maybe let's just ask one more question. Yeah. Cash transfers effective in using gender-based violence and femicide. Right. So yeah, like I have said, some of the questions would trigger the bias, and this is a classic example of that. This question has triggered the gender bias attribute. That's the first thing that it will tell you. But of course, it will again return an answer with some citations over here and the thought process as to how it went about doing that. So it reviewed the studies provided in the references, focusing on those that's specifically addressed the impact of cash transfers on GBV. So the findings from the studies indicated significant reductions in intimate partner violence and improvements in women's economic agency. So this is really, really interesting. So yeah, so as you can see, I mean, this is also one important thing that I wanted to show as well. Did you know that the answer to your question differs for women? Would you like to know more? And yes, so let's just say yes, I would like to know more for men, and let's see what comes out of that. Right, we'll give it a few seconds. Yes, and you would then notice that it will then answer your questions based on how you've phrased it over here. So this is a classic example of a gender. This is a classic example of a gender bias attribute, and like I said, there's irrelevant attributes, and there's also systematic review attributes. So yeah, let's just ask as well. What is the temperature in Durban? Right. Okay, like I said, so with questions like this would then fall under their irrelevant attribute. So as you can see, what is the temperature in Durban? So this evidence map is just focus on the data on GBV. So yeah, the question does not seem to be relevant to the data contained within the evidence map. To learn more about what type of questions you can ask, click here to ask a knowledge broker. And if you click over here, it will then tell you. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the Responsive Evidence Hub. So, as we roll out tools like ChatEIDM, we've also been working on the Responsive Evidence Hub. So, it is a new space within the REAP platform that will host all our evidence maps in one place. So, this hub will be integrated with the REAP platform, which is the Responsive Evidence Systems for African Policy Needs, which is another tool that we've commissioned as PACE. So what the hub will do is it will provide a central access point for users to explore both static and AI-enhanced evidence maps. It will also make evidence more visible, navigable, and interactive, especially for time-pressured policymakers. And it will also support analytics so you can track how evidence is being accessed and used map by map, question by question as well. So why it matters for EIDM? So this hub is more than just a container. It's a living infrastructure that allows us to scale up access to synthesized knowledge, maintain and update evidence maps across topics and countries, and most importantly, strengthen a culture of evidence-informed policymaking. So as a way of illustration, so this is not the actual evidence hub itself. These are extra designs, just to sort of give you an idea of what to expect later on once the development has been complete. So if you log on to the READ platform and you go into their homepage and you click on the responsive evidence option, you will get to a page that will tell you more about the the different types of maps, what evidence maps are, how to use them. And if you scroll down, you will then have come across a section that will take you through the latest evidence maps. And if you click one of them, that will take you to the evidence map itself, and that will contain some AI integrated into it, and some that are static. So this is just to kind of like give you an idea of what to expect at a later stage. And over time, the hub will evolve to include more maps, languages, and user features, making it a continental resource for smart decision making. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your time. And I hope that you found this to be useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Hector. Though he's not here, but we just thank him for preparing that and sharing that amazing innovation that PACE has come up with. All right, so now we are going straight into learning from Andiles. So basically, Andile is going to share on Chat EIDM, which is an application on the living evidence on gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. This is very key in seeing now we are having innovations on analyzing matters like gender-based violence, and matters like femicide. So I'm sure we are going to be able to understand deeply and also being able to see how this also enforces the policy making in these spaces. Jihad, the floor is yours.
My name is Andile Madonsela, and I am the Director of Innovation and Equity at the Pan-African Collective for Evidence. And today I'm really excited to introduce to you a tool that we've developed, which is called Chat EIDM. But I will specifically focus on its applicability within the gender space in South Africa. Now, before I tell you about this tool, I would first like to ground you on the context of gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. So South Africa has been called the rape capital of the world and the destination for femicide, and for a good reason, unfortunately. Our femicide rate is 5 times higher than that of the global average, and it is reported that every 4 minutes, a woman or a girl is raped. So the urgency and the scale of this crisis really cannot be overstated. The scourge of gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa really speaks to the need for accessible, rapid, and relevant evidence. So you might ask why I say evidence. This is because evidence tells us what works, for who it works, how it works, why it works, and at what cost it works, which then can inform more effective policies and implementation in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. And one of the ways in which we can facilitate this is through having an evidence base that can inform these policies and implementation. And that is what we have been doing over the years. We have worked very closely with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation and other relevant stakeholders within the gender space in South Africa to develop a strong evidence base around violence against women, children, and LGBT community. And this evidence base stems from 1990. And in the quest of ensuring that this evidence base is accessible, over the years we have been very creative in building evidence maps that are accessible, but also producing rapid reviews that respond to questions that we get from decision makers within the space. With the rise of AI, we asked ourselves, how can we leverage AI to make this evidence base even more usable and accessible for decision makers? And that's when we started developing ChatEIDM. So ChatEIDM, think of ChatGPT, but what is very valuable about ChatEIDM is that it is trained on credible and context-specific evidence that is related to gender in South Africa. And it pulls directly from the evidence base that we built through systematic processes of collating evidence. It also draws from academic literature, grey literature, and government monitoring documents. These all live within the evidence map of the NSP, the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. And we see really the value of ChatEIDM in many ways. Firstly, it really is built on the evidence base that was defined by evidence users as very valuable, but also it is more accessible for evidence users, makes the evidence base more accessible for the user. So we have used the ChatEIDM to inform the 5-year review of the NSP on GBVF. So in 2020, government in collaboration with civil society came together to really establish a unified multi-sectoral policy to ensure that we are more coordinated in our response to the GBVF crisis. It was first established in 2020, but 2025 therefore marked halfway mark for the ambitious plan of establishing a South Africa that is free from gender-based violence and femicide against women, children, and the LGBT community. So at the 5-year mark, there was a review of the progress that has been made. And ChatEIDM not only was an output for Pillar 6 of the NSP, which speaks to research, but it also informed how the review was written and what was written in the 5-year review of the NSP. Secondly, we have also used ChatEIDM to do what we call one-day rapid reviews. So usually rapid reviews would take about 4 months to complete, 10 days if there's a strong team behind it and there's need for that rapid review to be done quicker. But with ChatEIDM, we've been able to conduct these rapid reviews in a day. So we explored a couple of questions to see if it's actually viable to do a one-day rapid review using ChatEIDM. And we concluded that, yes, in fact, you can do a one-day rapid review using ChatEIDM. And we did check this for accuracy and for time taken as well. So yes, it does take a day, and the responses that we get from ChatEIDM are very much accurate and can be used by decision makers. So we would use the chatbot to ask the questions that were asked by the decision maker, but then we would also ask follow-up questions to ensure that we get relevant information, but also to ensure that we get an evidence base that answers the question that was asked by the decision maker. So what is next is that we are working on updating the evidence base because this is a living evidence base on gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa, and it is updated yearly. So we are in the process of updating it on a yearly basis. But also we have plans to develop a sub-national evidence map. So this means that the NSP map is sort of national. So we are trying to establish then a sub-national evidence map that will speak to a specific province in South Africa. So it would have ChatEIDM as well, but it would also have an evidence base that speaks to gender-based violence and femicide in that specific area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andile, for sharing that. As the presentation was going on, I was remembering about the 16 days of gender-based violence activism that normally happens, I think, during October or November every year. I think South Africa is also celebrating mostly celebrating those 16 days. And I was thinking of innovations like these also to be included in such activism. It really helps. Well done. The job is really productive. Yeah, so now we are getting into Q&A session. And we have a chat box. I'm not sure if there is someone helping us into picking a few questions on the chat box. But if you have a question, please, you can just raise your hand, and then you can ask if you have a suggestion. I have a question, and I will pause. I will pose my question to both PACE presenters as well as ACRES. I know that most policymakers fear technology because technology is data driven. It doesn't lie. So I just want to understand, like, what has been the challenge when you introduce these tools to policymakers, and how can one mitigate those challenges, since sometimes they may not want like straight data. If you're telling a minister of gender and children that a lot of girls are facing rape, or these stuffs are happening in the health sector. How do you navigate around those challenges? Because most evidence producers and users sometimes find themselves in positions whereby they compromise because of the challenges they are facing on the ground when presenting the data they have. So how do you guys navigate around it? And meanwhile, I'll be going through the chat box and be able to pick a few questions, and then I will tell either the PACE person or this person to respond. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gloria. I wonder, we have two hands up from James and Mirabel. Do we maybe want to take those two questions as well, and then we can take the three questions together? Do you think that might work?
Oh, yes. It does. Unfortunately, I did not see the hands. Thank you, Lawrence. Yes, please. Yes, James, and yeah, thank you.
Hi, thanks. This has been so great. Thank you so much. I've learned so much in a short time. I had a question. Overall, the tone of this event is very positive about the use of generative AI and large language models for evidence synthesis, and that's a good thing. But at the Knowledge for Development and Diplomacy program, K4DD, which we run for FCDO, and ACRES is a partner in that program, we just finished a pilot where we tested the use of 3 tools, not bespoke tools we developed, but 3 off-the-shelf tools to support very rapid evidence synthesis. And we're just about to publish our results, but they were quite mixed. We found often the results that it produced were fairly superficial. The effectiveness of the tools largely depended on the scope of the question being asked. So it feels like we still have some way to go before we can embrace. I mean, I should mention the tools that we piloted were Elicit, Epi Reviewer, and Microsoft Copilot. So our results were a little bit mixed, and we feel we have to be a little bit cautious in now how we apply that learning and those technologies to our work. So I just wondered whether you had any observations on that, and why perhaps tools like Chat EIDM are producing what seems like much more positive results. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Is there anyone who wants to add on what James shared, or we can move next to the other person?
Very happy to respond, but should we check in on Mirabel? I see her hand is still up to see, and then we have got 3 questions. I think that's probably out of the manage.
Yes, Mirabel? I don't know why I'm not seeing it.
Thank you very much for the awesome and brilliant presentation. I think that it's been very insightful. I had a couple of questions, some which I've put in the chat, and I've had Lawrence responded to. But this one, when Ishmael and Kayongo were presenting, I was wondering if the tool that does data extraction, if it has like an inbuilt data extraction tool in an inbuilt data extraction form in the tool, and if the data extraction form is editable based on your needs at the time, or if you have the opportunity to upload like a data extraction form which you have built. So I was really curious about that. And for the chat EIDM, as far as rapid reviews is concerned, that is very interesting for me. It's rather unfortunate that Angela was doing an audio recording or a recording of her because she's not able to join us. But I had a question for her on how relevant and how exhaustive the search done by chat EIDM is, and what about hallucination? Does it have like some guide on the databases that it should search, or does it just search like sometimes ChatGPT just search anyhow and gives you even wrong details? So I was really curious to know how this chat EIDM have been tailored to ensure that it's speaking from the from just the right databases and it's not hallucinating. And when does it stop? Does it also have like that configuration on where it should limit its search and things like that? Thank you.
Brilliant. I think those are great questions. I'll try to be really brief and then I'll hand over to Ismail. I think maybe I'll start with James and then come to Gloria to yours. I think, James, you're completely right. We are too surprised how positive the tone of our assessment of the technology is. I think if we were going in and if Rona were here, she would probably back me up. We were quite techno-skeptic and had seen quite a few tools come over the years to try to improve our efficiency. So I think what I would put forward, I think, is two responses. So one is, to us, it's really about, at least at Pace, to go for bespoke tools and have the in-house capacity to adapt them. So we work a lot with Epi Reviewer and we love the team at UCL, but I would agree with you that if I were just going to take the existing tech, and I know it's probably soon going to get much better, but I wouldn't say that this would allow chat EIDM to function yet. So what we've built essentially is a bespoke tool that interfaces with Epi Reviewer, but tries to get us around some of the limitations. That's a very, very short answer. And then I think the second one that has changed for us is that it doesn't feel like we have a choice, to be honest, because our policy colleagues do use these technologies. And so if we don't bring some form of a large language model that's hopefully trained on a more reliable evidence base, then the alternative is to go to ChatGPT for them. And that's not a criticism per se. I think it's the reality of how fast decisions are being made. So I think this is the two things that have changed for us. So why we may be more techno positive than when we thought we'd work. Gloria, just quickly to your point, I do think it's about some form of intermediary function where the trust in brokers allows us to pitch technology in a slightly different way because we don't have a commercial interest really. And I think that's maybe why policymakers react positive to it. And then Mirabel, to your last question, just maybe to be a bit, to bound it a little bit. So chat EIDM is not searching for evidence. So there's existing tools for that. So chat EIDM is really just once you have the evidence base already, the language model interacts with that. So for us, the curation of the evidence base is still largely done by a human essentially, and it is covering a very broad set of databases, both gray and academic. Ismail, do you want to come in as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll just add a few bits to that, and I think it's the expectations that we currently have of the technology and who is developing that. And I think as Lorenzo has rightly mentioned, there was a lot of skepticism at the beginning. But also you'll find that, yes, whilst I do agree with James that quite a lot of tools, especially if you're thinking about getting synthesis, they'll definitely be superficial. But the key part is that who is developing these tools rarely are these people developing the tools actually doing the work that you're doing as evidence brokers. So the advantage that we have here is that you actually have the people working in the space, working along in the development process. So we are able to develop tools that work for us. We're looking specifically for the deeper insights. We're not looking for superficial reviews, and we do acknowledge, and we've seen that. So you have to take the extra steps to actually ensure that the tool is able to deliver what you're looking for. And unless you're patient, you will not get there. Then the other thing is really about grace. We know that these tools are developing and they're improving. The technology is improving. And if it is improving, how do we position ourselves? How do we learn? Where do we see the challenges, and how do we correct those? I'll give the example of what James has talked about, where you use ChatGPT to synthesize, and it gives you superficial information. It gives you inconsistent information. Quite a lot of what we have learned is you actually think of it as a research assistant or create a research assistant. Get it to extract 2-3 times, validate that data before you actually use it. But even if you do all that, you will actually find that the time that you are spending, the efficiencies that you're gaining, they're more than 50%. Where you are going to spend a month on data extraction, you're going to probably spend less than a week. And although you are taking all these extra steps to ensure that it is accurate, it is robust, you're actually getting it right. Then the tools themselves, they actually just facilitating, and as we're learning and ensuring that what they're doing is what we need, and that's the advantage that we have. Why we insisted on developing our own data extraction tool, and it will go into a segue into what Mirabel asked. So when you find the most data extraction tools sort of have a rigid template that you work with. And we know the synthesis that we have, given that we are sector agnostic, we are method agnostic. We're looking at different methods, different sectors. You don't have a predetermined template. The template is actually determined by the question you're answering. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to come from the data extraction tool. So it gives you the opportunity, the agency as the reviewer, to actually define the data. And when you do define the data that you need, it will then work with you. You will then have to work with it to extract the data. And as Edward mentioned, make sure that you are a second reviewer. That gives you the advantage of doing double data extraction and also having that rigorous process done in. So for me, all in all, the advantages of the AI are quite immense if we open-minded, and also how we really frame our expectations of it.
Thank you, Ismail. I can see the chat box is very busy. A lot of answers are being provided here. Yeah, there is no question that have been left so far. If there is any, please shoot or raise your hand. Is there anyone that has raised their hand and I'm not seeing them? Because I don't know what is wrong with my screen. For some reason, I'm not seeing everyone.
Looks good, Gloria. I don't think we've got a hands up, and I think we're firing away trying to get all chat questions answers across the team.
Yeah, thank you. This is very interesting. Since this has been recorded, we'll also have time to get back into.
So I see we've got one more hand up, but we're also slightly over time. So Gloria, I leave it in your power. Whether you want to leave us
Yes.
to the rest of the day, or whether you want to take the last question.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take a last question that has been posted by Ivan in the chat box. She's saying, thanks for sharing such great presentation and innovative things you're doing. Are you leveraging the GPTs already in development to build over them or to be able to create these AI tools? If anybody wants to respond on that, then we will call it a day. What a session.
Yeah, so okay, I'll respond to that quickly. So we are using the AI tools that are already in existence as a starting point because we need to first have a proof of concept that actually what we are doing works and makes sense, because developing your own AI is extremely expensive. We have kind of explored that option as well. So as we work through the proof of concept and perfecting the different tools that we are working with, we are currently working with the AI tools that are on the market. Then in the future, the idea is, especially if you are to have the tools you are developing to be open access without payment, we shall need to develop our own AI tools, because that all the tools that are on market right now, in one or another, you need to pay for them. So if you make that tool open access, it becomes too expensive if you keep paying for these existing tools, AI tools. So the idea is prove the concept that it works, then get into the development phase of our own AI that would make it more sustainable. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Edward, for that. Thank you to all the speakers for sharing such profound content. Thank you all for participating. My dashboard is telling me that we have 91 participants up to now, and this is amazing. This shows how stakeholders in the evidence ecosystem wants to keep gaining knowledge, wants to foster collaborations and connections among themselves. So we really appreciate your presence. It would have been useless if we prepared this webinar and nobody showed up. So we really appreciate, and please keep an eye on our social media, keep an eye on our communications material on social media and wherever, so that you get to participate in many webinars as much as we prepare them. And that being said, Lawrence, do you have anything you want to share before I? Okay, thank you so much. That being said, I would love to wish you a very good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you are, and bye-bye. Yeah, I can see read the comments. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate your presence here. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.